Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to 11 Yanks Breakdown, where we discuss all things USMNT. I'm Pete Douthit, and today we are talking about Gregg Berhalter's systems of play and analyzing whether or not these systems that he uses fit with the next generation of American players. Okay, so this is part one of a two-part video series. In this first video, we're going to look at how Gregg Berhalter set up the USMNT in 2019 and analyze some of the problems with it. And in the next video, we're going to look at some of the next generation of Americans, look at their strengths and weaknesses, analyze their instinctive style of play, and see how Gregg Berhalter can maybe adapt some of his principles of play to them. Okay, so if we look at 2019, there are four clear tactical ideas that Gregg Berhalter built this team around. One, playing out of the back. Two, the 4-1-4-1 formation in possession of the ball. Three, the 4-4-2 mid-block in defense. And four, the long switch. Before we go forward, guys, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. It helps other people find us. Here we go. Okay, so playing out of the back has become very in vogue ever since Pep Guardiola started insisting that Barcelona play that way about 10 years ago. And ever since then, more and more teams have been trying to play out of the back, have been trying to develop defenders who can play with their feet. The real question is, why do teams want to play out of the back? The whole concept of playing out of the back involves creating space in a different part of the field. Some people think that playing out of the back is an aesthetic choice, but that's really not the case. The whole idea is that your goalkeeper starts with the ball, your center back split wide, and your fullback split even wider. Then your number 6 or defensive midfielder checks to the goalkeeper who passes the ball to him, and they try to play it out of the back. Ideally then, this would cause the opponent to press higher up the field to try to win the ball, then leaving space in behind that you could play beyond their back line. Now, some teams try to play out of the back regardless of the press, and that includes Gregg Berhalter. We saw this especially when we lost 3-0 to Mexico in the friendly last August, and over again, despite a 6 or a 7-man press, Berhalter insisted that the team keep playing out of the back, where we would lose the ball and they would get a chance on goal. 2 of our goals came from this exact style of play. I have no problem with trying to play out of the back on 2 conditions. 1, it should only be used to draw the opponent toward you and then hit them with space in behind. 2, if you're gonna play out of the back, you have to play with players who can play with their feet. Over and over again, Gregg Berhalter would call in Aaron Long. And I get it, Aaron Long is a good defender, but he can't play with his feet. So you can't really have it both ways. I used to tell my teams, the first 3 times we get a goal kick, we're going to play out of the back. This is going to then make the other team adjust, and they're going to push up to press us, and then we're going to hit them long with space in behind. And you can exploit that very easily if you understand what you're doing and how you're doing it. Too often, the USMNT in 2019 tried to play out of the back as though it was an aesthetic choice, as though somehow playing out of the back made us a better team. It didn't. It made us worse because we invited the press, we didn't play over or beyond it, and we frequently lost the ball. Number 2 was the 4-1 formation when in possession of the ball. So basically, you've got your back 4, you've got a holding midfielder, you've got a line of 4. These guys are attacking midfielders or dual 8s because they would have to run up and down the field a lot. It was like having 2 box-to-box midfielders who were supposed to both join the attack and also join the defense. And then you had your wingers and your forward up top. Now, personally, I prefer a 4-3-3 formation or a 4-2-3-1. I don't really have a problem with 4-1-4-1 so long as you can execute it properly. The problem with this formation is that when we were attacking, the dual 8s would go forward to try to offer support and the fullbacks would push up. But then when we lost the ball, we were very vulnerable to the counterattack because you had 2 guys going forward and only 1 holding midfielder. Even worse, oftentimes this holding midfielder was a guy like Michael Bradley or Jackson Ewell or Will Trapp, who are good distributors of the ball but cannot defend. So the whole formation lacked balance. Not necessarily because the formation was wrong, but because a lot of the times the players that he would put into these formations didn't really fit the part or threw the balance of the team off. The other thing about this formation is that it requires a very heavy possession style. And frankly, most of the players that Gregg Berhalter called up in 2019 are not technical possession players. Playing a strong possession game is risky because if you lose the ball and you're not planning to high press to win it back, you leave yourself very vulnerable to the counter attack. And oftentimes, that's what Gregg Berhalter did. He prioritized possession, but wouldn't select players who can play possession football. You have to be very technical and very intelligent to play possession soccer. Number 3 was the 4-4-2 mid-block. Now, typically, when you're setting up a defensive block, you have 3 options in the modern game. You've got a low block, or what some people call parking the bus, where you put all your guys back and you just defend the goal for your lives. You've got a mid-block, where you start to press the ball at about the halfway line of the field. And you've got a high block for teams that want to press high up the field and win the ball back as close to the opponent's goal as they can. Now, each of these formations has both strengths and weaknesses, but what we have to look at is not just where you set up your block, but how you set up your block. And Gregg Berhalter set up his mid-block as a 4-4-2. Now, the disadvantages of a 4-4-2 mid-block are these. 1, you're not winning the ball high up the field, right? You're giving them space there. 2, you're also leaving space in behind. So for me, I don't love this. But even worse was that he set up a mid-block in a 4-4-2. What's wrong with that? I'll tell you. The problem with a 4-4-2 mid-block is that you're playing in straight lines, and it's very easy for technical opponents to place themselves in between the lines and attack you that way. So many times in 2019, the opponents would play the ball in between the lines. You get smart, technical players who play in between the lines of 4. They receive the ball on the half turn, and then they play each other through on goal. This happened over and over again in 2019 when we played opponents with any kind of quality. Okay, so the 4th hallmark of Gregg Berhalter's style of play is the big switch. Basically, the team would try to circulate the ball and move it over to one side of the field in order to draw the opponent's block of defense over to that side of the field. So they would play the ball back to the 6, the Michael Bradley, Jackson Ewell, Will Trapp type character, who would then launch a long switch over to this side of the field where the opposing fullback on the opposite side would make a run and usually one-touch the ball into the box, which would be attacked by any of the following players. Now, in principle, that's not a bad strategy. The only problem is you cannot build your entire team around it. Why not? Well, for one thing, it's not that difficult to scout and defend against. If I'm an opposing coach and I know that they're going to play the ball here to this number 6 and he's going to play it long, there's several ways that I can do it. For one thing, all I have to do is instruct my number 10, get a very mobile number 10, instruct him to stay hard on him so he cannot do the big switch. When they play it to him, force him back the other way. Don't let him do the big switch. The other thing that I could do is tell my winger on this side to track the run of the fullback. Make sure he knows he's going to make that run. There are many possible ways to defend against this kind of a play, and if you build your whole team around it, you're very one-dimensional. This isn't some new revolutionary tactic that Berhalter introduced. Teams all over the world use this, but they don't make it a primary component of their style of play like Berhalter was trying to do. And so much of the time, it didn't really work. It worked a little bit against lower CONCACAF opponents, but when we tried it against actual quality teams, it almost always failed. So those are the 4 key components to Berhalter's style of play. Now, this video hasn't been super positive, but it's important for us to look at what Berhalter is trying to do and assess and ask ourselves, honestly, is it working? Does it fit the player pool? So in next week's video, I'm going to look at our player pool, this next generation of players that's coming up, that's playing at very, very high levels in Europe, and ask myself this: what is their natural, instinctive way of playing? And maybe I'll give Berhalter a few tips or clues as to what I think he can do to adapt his system to the player pool. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments. I will respond. Love hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and I will see you next Tuesday with part 2.